Hi friends, and welcome to my channel, The Musings of the Witty Avocado. My name is Anna. I'm an online intuitive eating coach and an eating disorder specialized dietitian. Today I wanted to talk to you about something that is very close to my heart, very personal, but I'm hoping that if I share my story, it helps a lot of people just feel like they're not alone and inspire them maybe to get the help that they need and they deserve. And that story is my own recovery from an eating disorder. And before we get started, I wanted to give my normal disclaimer. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. You should always seek out your clinician, your dietitian, whoever is in your personal care team before making any changes to just save your health and well-being. Throughout the course of my master's and really me studying to become a dietitian, I was often asked, why did I want to become a dietitian? And whenever I answered that question, I really only gave a partial answer. And it's because I just didn't feel comfortable explaining the real reason why. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that there is a lot of stigma still around eating disorders, which is really what inspired me to do this video, is that I want to start having that conversation over and over and over again so we eliminate that stigma around not only people dealing with the eating disorders, but I think people who are working with people who have eating disorders who have dealt with an eating disorder. That makes sense. I feel like that was like a big jumble of words. But the reason why I never really explained to people when they initially asked me why I became an eating disorder is because I was concerned that I would be judged, that I'm going to be going into this profession that's supposed to know so much about food and nutrition and how to eat correctly. I was just like, okay, would people take me seriously if I said, hey, I had an eating disorder? The answer is yes. But it still made it really hard to be open and honest. And I think too that an eating disorder is a really personal, vulnerable experience. And so it's not easy for people to talk about because there is that fear of will people judge me? Will people look at me and think, oh, are you actually healed? Will you be able to do your job? The answer is still yes. I wanted to become a dietitian because I know what it's like to live with an eating disorder. I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like to deal with it in silence. I know what it's like, especially to deal with it in a larger body and to have no one believe you. And in fact, to have people tell you, basically encourage you to keep doing your behaviors for the pursuit of weight loss. I know what it's like. And so I wanted to be that dietitian that could help people and be like, I'm here. I'm hearing you. I'm listening to you. Let's help you. Let's actually help you because you deserve to be helped. I never want people to experience the pain that I have felt with an eating disorder because the last almost 20 years of my life when I was dealing with an eating disorder, it was hard. It was very painful. It was emotionally draining. And it left me with a very long period of time where I felt like there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't good enough. And that just sucks. And I never want people to experience that. Or if they're experiencing it, I really want to help them heal. So that's why I became a dietitian, in addition to just being an advocate for people in larger bodies, because weight stigma sucks. I hate it so much. And I want to bring down diet culture. But that's the point. So today I really wanted to share my story. What it was like when I had an eating disorder, what my recovery looked like, and what life looks like now. And hopefully my story will encourage you that if you are dealing with an eating disorder, you deserve to seek out care, you deserve to get better, you deserve to be heard. So as I mentioned, I dealt with an eating disorder for about 20 years of my life. And when you talk to my mom, she would tell you that she originally took me to see a therapist around the age 7, 8, which is pretty young, for eating concerns. She wasn't really sure what was going on. She's like, there's something here. And 7, 8 years old is a pretty young age for someone to have an eating disorder. On average, the youngest we typically see is around 9, 10. So 7, 8 years old, a really young age to be dealing with an eating disorder. And at the time, binge eating disorder wasn't something that was typically discussed. It wasn't a very well-known eating disorder. When we think about eating disorders, we typically think about anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, things of that nature. And so my mom knew that I had eating concerns, but she wasn't really sure what was going on. And she was a single parent too, so she really didn't have the money to continuously take me to therapy. And so I saw a therapist for a couple of sessions, and because she was outside of our insurance, we just couldn't maintain it. And so I dealt with my eating disorder kind of in silence for a good chunk of my life, just because my family and I, we just didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about my eating disorder, and I don't blame them in any way. I don't wish them any ill will. My mom did the best that she could. My family did the best that they could, given the fact that it wasn't well known. Binge eating disorders wasn't known as this thing that could be dealt with through therapy and care. So with that said, that means that I spent a very long period of my life dealing with an eating disorder alone. I remember there were times that I would sneak food from the cabinet. I would go grab it when my mom wasn't looking. I'd take it up to my room and I'd eat it really quickly, and I'd hide wrappers under my pillow, in drawers, in my closet. And then when she would go to bed, I would take all the wrappers and I would hide them in boxes or bags that were already in the garbage so she wouldn't see it. Because I was oh yeah, she won't see it. She won't know that I'm eating more than I should. And this kind of behavior really continued on for a really large part of my childhood and adolescence. And it was really fueled, I'm not sure what really triggered the eating disorder itself, other than a lot of past trauma that I've been through, but it was really fueled by the fact that I was horribly bullied for my weight. I was always in a larger body. I've been in a larger body since the age of 4, and I was unfortunately very horribly bullied for my weight. And those comments, those negative things that people would say to me, I internalized that weight stigma. I internalized, and I started to believe them to be true. So when people said I was fat, lazy, disgusting, worthless, the whole gamut, they became a part of my belief system about myself, and that only further fueled my eating disorder of I'm eating too much, I should be doing everything possible to be changing my weight, be changing my body, I'm not good enough. And that sort of mental restriction fueled that drive to binge, and it just kind of created this cycle of binging and then feeling guilt and shame and then restricting and so on and so forth. So I kind of went throughout my childhood, early adolescence, being bullied, binge eating pretty significantly. When I went into the summer before my freshman year of high school, I had made this decision that I was going to lose weight. I was going to get the best weight possible. I was going to be, frankly, my goal was to be hot. Oh man, yeah. So I was if I could only lose weight, I'd be more attractive. Boys would like me. I'd have more friends in school, yada, yada, yada. And so I remember my mom and I got a gym membership to the gym, a local gym nearby. And I remember almost every single day being in the gym and exercising for 2+ hours, riding the elliptical for an hour-ish, but pushing my body to the point that I physically was going to pass out because I just wasn't eating enough. I remember at that same time I was restricting pretty severely, not to the point where it would be considered anorexia, atypical anorexia, but it was definitely, I was restricting to the point where I wasn't giving my body the energy that it needs, and I was compensating for anything that I ate by over exercising, and then I would binge after because your body doesn't like not eating. That was what my summer before high school looked like. And I remember starting high school and I was in a smaller body. I don't remember, I think I was a size 14 at the time. I don't remember. But I remember starting high school okay, this is it. This is going to be, I'm going to stay this weight forever. It's going to be great. But I was still dealing with an eating disorder. My relationship with food, my body was still not great. And even though I'd lost weight going into high school, I still felt really bad about myself. I still had really low self-esteem, self-confidence. I still felt like I was very worthless. And I think I relied on food a lot to kind of tend to those emotions, because those are really painful emotions to have. And so I would, eat emotionally, and that sort of coping mechanism only caused me to feel more guilt and shame, and that guilt and shame only fed into my eating disorder and just made those binging episodes really strong. And then I would restrict, and it was just, again, a continuously endless cycle. And high school was really rough. if I'm being entirely honest. Like, high school was really rough. A lot of my adolescence I actually don't remember, and I think that might be like a trauma response, that it has just like blacked out a lot of my adolescence. But I remember high school being really bad because I was still being bullied for my weight. I can remember comments like word for word that were just very triggering for my eating disorder. And it was hard because I still didn't know that I was dealing with an eating disorder. And so I couldn't say like, and it's really not my responsibility to, but like I couldn't say like, hey, I'm dealing with an eating disorder, can you please stop bullying me for my weight? But instead it still made me continue to internalize that weight stigma and continue to feel like there was a growing feeling of there is something wrong with me, there is something wrong with my body, I'm not good enough. And so it just kind of continued fueling those eating disorder thoughts. I feel like I just keep saying the same thing over and over again, but like it was hard. It was really hard being bullied in high school and junior high and elementary school, middle school, whatever, and having this eating disorder and not understanding what was going on, because like internally I would feel like, okay, there is something wrong with me. Like I lose control around food. No matter how hard I try, I just can't not eat these bad foods. Like I just can't stop. Like when I'm around them, I just eat them as fast as possible. Like it's just gone. I'm very mindless. I'm checked out. I lose control. And then I just feel all this guilt and shame that's just so overwhelming after it. It was just, it's a horrible experience. And it felt like I should be having better control over myself and my body and my eating habits, because I'm being told at school and my peer group that there's something wrong with my body, I'm too fat, I'm lazy, I'm gonna break chairs, things of that nature. And it was hard because like I was naturally a perfectionist at that time too, and so since I couldn't control my eating habits, I like drove myself into my education and ended up being one of the top of my class, so I guess that's good. But it's like I had all these accomplishments and I never felt good enough. And that's just really hard to think about yourself when you're like 16, 17, 18, all that jazz. And my eating disorder behaviors really continued throughout college. I will say that my eating disorder behaviors never really stayed consistent. So I had waves where maybe I binged a lot and I didn't do any restriction or over exercising. There were periods where I did restrict a lot. I overcompensated through exercising. There were periods where I just restricted and binged, but it was never really the same. And then I remember in college, I was taking an abnormal psych class. We're like sitting down learning about eating disorders, and in any psych class, abnormal psych class, I feel like the first thing they tell you is, hey, by the way, it's really common for people to self-diagnose themselves with some sort of mental health disorder, so try not to do that. And I was like, okay, I can do that. But we're sitting there, we're talking about eating disorders, and I remember they got to the section on binge eating disorder, and I was listening to them and I was just like, huh, oh, that describes me to a T. That is exactly what I've been dealing with since I was 7, 8 years old. Holy smokes. And so it really got my wheels turning. I didn't seek out therapy then. I wish I would have. I didn't seek out therapy then, and I still struggled with my eating disorder alone for another year. But it was really helpful to be like, there is a tangible word for what I'm dealing with. There is an actual disorder for what I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with binge eating disorder. I have an eating disorder. Like, it was just mind-blowing to be like, there's nothing actually, I mean, there is something wrong with me in the sense that I'm dealing with an actual disease, but it was like, it was nice to be like, wow, it's not that there's actually something wrong with me. Like, there is a reason why I'm acting the way that I do. There is a reason why I don't have control over my food. It's because I have an actual mental health disorder. But typical Anna fashion, I was just like, oh, I can deal with this on my own. I'm fine. So it was end of my first semester senior year, beginning of my last semester of college, I got to the point where my binge eating was so bad, it was so out of control, that I just felt this like overwhelming flood of emotion of just like, I can't anymore. I just can't. I've been carrying this burden for so long by myself. I just can't. And so I actually, I scheduled an appointment with mental health got a therapist. She referred me to a dietitian, and so I started my therapy from there. And I was really fortunate that I clicked really well with my therapist. We got along really well. She was great at her job. And I am incredibly fortunate too, because I did not have the money for therapy. I was broke. Every ounce of money that I made was going towards school. And she was very kind, and she worked with me pro bono. At least I think she did. Maybe the school like paid her. But she was like, yeah, no, you don't have to pay me anything. So I feel incredibly fortunate that she was willing to work with me for absolutely no pay from my end. And the dietitian too, I don't know if that was covered by my health insurance at the time, or if she was also just like, yeah. But yeah, I had a really great treatment team, and actually working with that dietitian inspired me to become a dietitian later on. So that was really cool. It's interesting when you experience like different things in your life and it inspires you to go do something else. But yeah, so I had a really great treatment team for that last 4-ish months of college that really helped to kind of set the tone for my recovery, in a sense that they started working with me on developing those skills of challenging those thoughts that I had about my body, like, you know, those thoughts of like, oh, I'm worthless, there's nothing good about me, you know, the long line of things that you tell yourself about your body. And she started getting me to challenge those thoughts and being like, you're worthless? What are you talking about? You have all these wonderful qualities about yourself. Oh, you're lazy? You're going to college full time, you're working in a lab, you're volunteering at a hospital, and you're working in a restaurant like 20-30 hours a week. Like, how are you lazy? And when you have someone reflect some of those like beliefs that you have about yourself, you're able to sit and analyze and be like, maybe those aren't right. But yeah, so I worked with them for about 4 months, and then after college I moved back home, and I just didn't have the money to continue therapy because I was broke. I just spent a lot of money at college paying for my education, and I couldn't find a job in my field. So I just kind of was a manager of a restaurant, but I didn't really have that extra money to pay for therapy. But I had a taste of recovery looked like, and I just didn't want to go back. And so I was just like, all right, I don't have that mental capacity to really start working on food right now, so let's start working on my body image. And so I just started slowly working on my body image. I started challenging the thoughts that I had about my body. I started working on my self-confidence. I explored my fashion, my sense of makeup. But I really focused on when I had those negative thoughts about myself, I would take those negative thoughts and I would transform them into something that was more neutral and more positive. And so I had 3-ish years of me doing this, and then I slowly started working on my diet as well, in a sense of giving myself permission to eat foods, feeling a little less guilty about what I was eating. And then I applied for grad school. And by that point, when I was in grad school studying to become a dietitian, I was in a much better place. I wouldn't say that I was fully recovered, but I was definitely in a much better place. And so I was able to kind of start that first semester in a fairly good headspace. I will say that first semester, even second semester of my first year of grad school, was triggering because I was in a nutrition program. We were talking about all the benefits of like healthy foods, and so I felt this like immense pressure that I had to eat perfectly because I was going to be a dietitian, and as a dietitian we're kind of like a billboard for our services. So I was like, okay, like if I'm going to be a dietitian, I have to eat perfectly, therefore I have to eat clean foods, I can't eat anything processed, I can't have any sugar, yada yada yada, the list was on and on. So I was still in that restrictive, triggering mindset. But I just, in that last year of my grad school, I was able to discover intuitive eating, which was probably the best thing that happened to me. It was amazing. And I took classes on eating disorder work, and I took classes on motivational interviewing and weight stigma. And so I was able to really use the education that I was learning to challenge those eating disorder thoughts. And then when I discovered intuitive eating, it was like the cherry on top. We were just like, yes, okay, I have all this knowledge ruminating in my head. How do I apply those so that I have this long-term sustainable recovery? So I was able to use the intuitive eating principles to really heal on my own. Do I recommend doing that on your own? No. I spent almost 20 years of my life dealing with an eating disorder where I was in this mental place of just not greatness. it was a very painful journey. So do I recommend healing from your eating disorder on your own? No, not in the slightest. But I will say that I was able to fortunately do so. And so I've been recovered for about 3-ish years. I had a little bit of a re-triggering episode in my job before I started my private practice, where I was working in a bariatric clinic, and the act of talking about, even though I tried using a weight inclusive lifestyle, intuitive eating-esque approach with working with my clients, where we didn't focus on weight loss, we focused on lifestyle behaviors. Just the fact that every person came in was talking about their desire for weight loss was very triggering for me, and so I had to leave that position just for my own mental health. But I did have a triggering episode with that, and then the start of the pandemic obviously was a little hard, but I was able to really work that. I had those tools that I developed both in therapy with intuitive eating, and so I had a week or two of that where it was just really rough, and I was like, all right, no, we're gonna kick these eating disorder thoughts out of our head. We've got this, we're gonna go. And so yeah, that's been the course of, it's kind of like a history of my eating disorder. I don't know how linear that was. But yeah, it was just like, when I think back to the course of my eating disorder, it brings back a lot of pain. Not in the sense of like I haven't healed from it, but it just makes me sad that when I look back at younger Anna, I had to deal with a lot, and I dealt with a lot on my own. And just when I think about who I am now, I'm a very confident individual. I will tell you, these are all the amazing things about me, not in a gloating way, just more of like, I see the value in who I am as a person. And so it makes me really sad when I look back at younger Anna, and younger Anna couldn't see those things. And instead she listened to her bullies, she listened to the weight stigma. And it makes me angry too that none of my clinicians caught my eating disorder. I was not screened for an eating disorder until I went into a clinic for my eating disorder. Like, there should have been some like steps in between there to catch people. And that's why I always talk about how it's really important, especially as clinicians, if there are clinicians here watching, we need to be screening everyone, not just people who look like they have an eating disorder. Everyone. Because I slip through the cracks. And being in a private practice where I only work with eating disorder clients, or people who are just, not, I don't only, but like half of my practice is eating disorder clients. The majority of my clients are people who are in normal, larger bodies. And they've gone, maybe not almost 20 years, but they've gone a really long time without anyone noticing that they had an eating disorder, because no one's been screening them. And it makes me angry for them, because I know how painful it is to live in a body that doesn't look stereotypically like someone with an eating disorder, and to have no one reach out to help you. So I'm angry for them, and I'm sad for them, because I want everyone to have a great relationship with food and their body. But yeah, I think as clinicians we need to be doing a much better job at screening. Yeah, that's my little soapbox. But I want to say that if you are dealing with an eating disorder on your own, alone, maybe you have questions about your relationship with food and your body, and you're like, this isn't normal, there's something wrong, I feel very out of control, or I constantly think about food, or food causes me so much guilt and shame, it's just overwhelming, or just the whole gamut where you just don't have that peace of mind of food is food and I can just eat it. I want to let you know that it is okay for you to reach out for care. It is okay for you to seek help. And I will link some resources below for ways that you can find a clinician in your area, or if you're interested in working with me, feel free to reach out to me. If I can't work with you because of state licensure laws, I will try to point you in the right direction to find someone. But you are 100% deserving of help. You do not need to deal with this eating disorder on your own. You deserve to have peace of mind. You deserve to eat food and enjoy it. You deserve to move your body in ways that feel good. You deserve to look in the mirror and be like, you know what? Maybe I don't necessarily love you today, but I'm going to respect you because you are, I know fundamentally you're an amazing person. Maybe I don't feel great about you, my body, but you as a person, you are so worthy. I want that for you. I want you to feel like you're an amazing person, because you are. So like I said, I'm going to leave the resources down below. If you have questions, you have concerns, feel free to comment below. But I'm sending you so much love. I'm sending so much positivity. And I hope that hearing my story makes you feel like you're not alone, that there's people out there who know what you're going through and they're happy to help because you deserve it. I hope you found this video informational, helpful in some way, maybe inspiring. If you want to, I encourage you to click the subscribe button so you don't miss any more of my future videos. But until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day and remember to be kind to yourself. Bye.